This is Wanderlust, written by Craig A. Falconer, narrated by Jack DeGolia. Chapter 1. No one has ever made it back. From what they tell us, no one has even made it there. This training outpost started out with 30 candidates, and there are 21 of us left. You could have cut the tension with a knife at last night's final supper, because we all know this morning's monthly nomination is the last one ever. Today, one last candidate will be chosen. Tonight, one last candidate will be tossed in a metal casket and flung towards Calbora, an uninhabited planet surrounded by the most hostile storm system we've ever encountered. The other 20? They go home. There are no facades of toughness anymore, at least when the commanders aren't looking. None of us are a day over 19, but in the cafeteria last night, I saw shaky hands gripping plates, beads of sweat running down foreheads, eyes closed in prayer. My fellow candidates are shells of their former selves. All they want is to make it home. All they want is to survive. I've learned a lot of things since I came here, but one now stands out above the rest. Fear breaks men. Psychology is a funny thing. At first, with 30 of us, there was a 33% chance that any individual would eventually be chosen as one of the 10 nominees. Now the chance of any remaining candidate being chosen is less than 5%. But if fear breaks men, emotion breaks reason. Even as fear has become decreasingly justified in a rational sense, everything has grown increasingly amplified in an emotional sense. Rational or not, my comrades are much more worried about this final nomination than any before it. It's the closeness that gets you, the thirst for absolute safety, the desperation for guaranteed survival. It gets more intense as the prospect gets closer. By lunchtime, we'll know who's going. By lights out, they'll be gone. Today's the day and tonight's the night. For each of my comrades, there's one more hurdle to overcome before they can go home for good. But while they've all been hoping and praying their names won't be called, passively leaving their lives and destinies in the hands of others, I've been doing all I can to secretly influence the commander's nominations. My results speak for themselves. I'm still here. 3 times I've worked to actively influence the nomination, and 3 times another name has been called. That's what I call a 100% record, a 100% record of failure. But today is going to be different. My plan is better now. Today has to be different. My plan can't fail again. This is it. This is everything I've been working towards. This is my last chance to reach Calbora. Chapter 2. I'll get up soon. Skip will make sure of that. But I want to keep my eyes closed for another minute or two. I had the dream again. Half memory, half imagination, all enticing. Alluring, captivating, tantalizing. Give me your best words and none will be good enough. There are no words for how badly I want to be there. I don't want these images to fade away a second before they have to. Paradise exists. We're here on this station, the Bay, because paradise exists. You see, we were brought here to train for a dangerous mission. Recruited isn't right because no one asked. The commanders used to like insisting we'd been rewarded for exceptional educational attainment and should be grateful for the honor, but in light of recent events, even they've given up on that line. We're untold miles away from LS Alpha, the life station our ancestors developed when the old world became uninhabitable. Every other human is either on Alpha or one of its equally artificial moons, and some of the training experiments rumored to happen on those stations sound bad enough that maybe this place should feel like a reward after all. Technically speaking, The bay isn't even a station at all. It's the ship we arrived here on. Here is a high Calboran orbit, a year's journey from Earth and just hours from the planet we came to observe. I think calling it a station is supposed to have some psychological benefit. Maybe so we feel like sardines stuffed safely in a tin instead of flopping around in a net. I don't know. Call me cynical. The point is, in all the generations since humanity evacuated the old world just in time, Calbora is the first promising planet we've detected. Everything we know about the surface suggests it's safe for life. The problem is, there's something in the way. A probe from LS Alpha made it to the surface one time, long before I was born, and the atmospheric readings were perfect. Then a storm hit, a storm that hasn't let up for decades, and a storm that's incapacitated every probe humanity has sent its way. That's where we came in. The theory supposedly holds that the Calboran storm is preventing all signals from getting through, rather than actually destroying the probes. That means if a human could touch down and gather intelligence, they should be able to leave again. With a well-trained pilot, the storm should be passable in both directions. But when you consider that Calbora is less than a day's journey away from the bay, and that none of our excellent pilots have returned, despite the first of them leaving 9 months ago, the theory starts to fall down. My hopeful theory of why no one has come back, which I'd probably be laughed off the bay for sharing out loud, is that Calbora is too beautiful for anyone to want to leave. We've grown up in cubicles and dorms, spending our lives without sunlight and wind, two of the things the stories and poems of the first-gen evacuees mentioned most of all. Our feet have never felt real ground. Our lungs and lips have never tasted the outside. Our skin has never felt the warmth of a sun or the tears of a cloud. In all our years, we have never lived free. The few pictures the probe was able to send back to LS Alpha before the storm hit were incredible. Calbora looked like the best parts of the old world, Earth. And for the first time, we all really believed that those old photos were real. The mountains and oceans and deserts in our history books seemed like fiction until we saw similar wonders with our own eyes, roundly dismissed as comforting fairy tales by a population who couldn't conceive that such natural beauty might actually exist. But it does exist, still, on Calbora, if not on Earth. And it exists so close that I could see it through my dorm window if the storm cloud blanket would only let up. The promised land is hours away, but the land isn't all that calls me. Stories from the old times spoke of water rushing around in rivers, with even more water surrounding some of the land to make islands. Calbora has all of that, too. The only ocean any of us have ever known is the ocean of space. But we're so close now that the remaining distance is practically more like a swimming pool. If all goes well, tomorrow morning I'll be waking up on a new world. Instead of these stifling metal walls, I'll be surrounded by more land than my feet could ever cover. Water so clear it reflects the nearby trees. And wow, those trees! Now I'm getting to the best part. Those trees of green will be a sight to behold, but absolutely nothing compared to the green of, "Good morning, Zach. It's time to rise." Of course it is. Chapter 3. 7 hours is more than enough. Skip chides, the tone lighthearted. Come on now, Zach. No one likes a slouch. I don't know why he has to talk so loud or come so close, let alone drop in the semi-joking judgments. But as P-bots go, Skip is more than okay. He helps me to keep my schedule, which is sometimes no small feat when I get caught up in my plan. Just as importantly, he also keeps me company and talks to me when I look like I need it. That's the whole idea of a partner bot, P-bot for short, And Skip does the best job anyone could ask for. The past 10 months have been easier with him than they would have been without him, and especially the past 4. The Peabots are here to keep us emotionally stable as well as assist with basic tasks. And they're all made to have unique faces and become bonded to one human. For most of us, they're buddies rather than partners, and I know some of us talk to our Peabots more than we talk to each other. More on that later. It's important. So far, all 9 chosen candidates have taken the option to bring their Peabot with them on the journey to Calbora. I think that tells you they're worth having around. Zacharias. Full name. Ouch. He means business. Skip's voice and face are both remarkably lifelike and expressive, even though he's entirely silver like every other Peabot, so as to avoid the whole uncanny valley danger of looking too real. Not that a floating head is ever going to look real, but I guess those kinds of design decisions became the default options back when robots needed legs or at least wheels. One time, I read that on the old world, people used to have live animals instead of Peabots. They couldn't talk or do anything useful, but their affection was organic, in a way Skip's can never be. I can understand the attraction of that. Still, I know better than to wish for things I can't have. Skip might not love me, but he's here. Zachar, I'm up, I tell him, slowly shifting to make the statement literally true. One more nomination, Skip, just one more. His face morphs. Overly expressive would be a fair description, now and always, but at least his hamming it up never leaves you in any doubt. You are very relaxed about this, perhaps even excited? Aren't you? I ask. We're so close. Or are you worried I'll be nominated, like everyone else is worried they'll be? Well, Zach, your chance of being randomly nominated is approximately 4.76%. Preparation is essential, but emotional anticipation of an unlikely outcome serves little purpose. And as you know, I feel no emotion. His final comment comes with a wink, the kind of thing that sometimes makes me wonder. But his position on this is one of pure rationality. I'm unsurprised. Maybe I'm naive to think Skip would ever knowingly lie to me, but he seems to really think the nomination process is random. I've paid enough attention to know better, and my whole plan rests on that. Does any part of you want me to be chosen? I ask him. So you can explore beyond these walls? See what's out there, not just on another station, but on an actual world? My place is by your side, Zach, wherever that takes me. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but there aren't exactly very many parts of me. This is just about the most classically Skip response he could have given. The kindness and sentimentality, then a deadpan joke. I laugh. He smiles. Why do you ask? He continues. I saw it coming. Does part of you want to go despite the unimaginable dangers? Showtime. I don't like lying to Skip or anyone else, but I know, for a fact, that the Bay's commanders can access every conversation we have. I know, for a fact, they sometimes make use of that power. Once we make it to Calbora, I'll never lie to Skip again when they're all out of reach, and I'm right where I'm supposed to be. But for now, I have no choice. There are things he can't know yet, like the fact I want to go, and especially the reason why. We don't have to imagine the dangers, I say. It's been 9 months since the first candidate left, and no one has made it back. We don't even have proof that anyone has made it to the surface. Our approach pods weren't made for storms like that. Nothing was made for storms like that because we had never even dreamed of storms like that. I didn't think so, he says. It comes with a nod this time, which is always a funny thing to see. Just picture a floating robot head tipping forward to do its best nod. That's my Skip. I nod along with him. It's a suicide mission, and the commanders know it. Calbora looks incredible, but trying to make it through the storm system to see it up close is, well, I don't even know. It's like diving for a pearl in the middle of a volcano. Quite a vivid image. I opt for a sigh. If I told Skip I wanted to go, I wouldn't be nominated. I've kept detailed notes on what other candidates have said during our assembly meetings with the commanders, and no one who has overtly expressed either strong willingness or strong reluctance to make the trip has ever been chosen. Ahead of the past 4 nominations, I noted as many variables as I could and created a likelihood ranking. Each time, my number 1 pick was chosen to make the trip. There's a lot more to it than expressed opinions, naturally, since most of us keep our counsel. But for whatever reason, keenly wanting to go and desperately wanting not to go are automatic disqualifiers. On top of that, I've also looked at physical performance and training drills, as well as our flight training rankings. The commanders make all of that public, playing on our competitive instincts, and it's pretty obvious that some people purposefully underperform at flight training on the assumption that doing too well could land them with a one-way ticket to Storm City. That tells me that some of my comrades aren't stupid, since they know the nominations aren't random. But this also tells me they aren't exactly bright, because the monthly leader of the flight training rankings has never been chosen. It's almost like the commanders reward honest effort with nomination immunity. The approach pods pretty much fly themselves, so there's no reason for the rankings to have any major bearing, especially considering we're all elite pilots and the margins are razor thin. If I wanted to play it safe and avoid the risks of Calbora living an unexceptional life as an unremarkable man, I would have topped the rankings this month like I always used to before I started suspecting it was earning immunity. I'm not the best, just the best of us. We're young, 19 at most, and even I would be firmly in the promising newbie camp at LS Alpha's flight school. Anyway, I've done all I could so far. I looked for the subjective commonalities between recent nominations, then cross-referenced all of that with the monthly attainment rankings. From there, I made myself a blueprint, and I followed it to the letter. I can't say for sure that there's any link between some of the variables I've identified and the final outcomes, and I feel like I might be stretching to think some of them play a part, but it definitely doesn't do my chances any harm to follow the pattern as closely as I can. The list is as long as my arm, and all you have to know is that I've been living my life in a manner I think will maximize my chances of being chosen. Granted, it's failed up until now, but we still have a communal breakfast to come before the nomination ceremony, and I'll be damned if I haven't left one more trick up my sleeve for the last minute. Chapter 4. Before I got here, I'd only read about algae machines in books. They're incredible. I have no idea why we don't have them on LS Alpha, unless we're being used as guinea pigs to safety test these machines, pretty much like we're safety testing the journey to Calbora. They're basically tall vending machines with self-contained and self-sustaining algae tanks inside. You pick your selection from any of 100 choices, and in almost no time you get a damn good version of that meal, shaped out of convincingly flavored and colored algae. The nutritional profile is designed to give us all we need, and if I didn't know what I was eating, I'd be looking for a chef to compliment after every meal. I thought stuff like this only existed in sci-fi stories about trips to cool new worlds, but here we are. There's always a double line of people waiting, since we all arrive at the same time, and there are only 2 machines, and today these lines are part of my final stage plan. This is another one of those things that might not help, and in all truth probably won't, but I have to throw everything at the wall in the hope something's going to stick. I look between the 2 lines of my hungry and worried-looking comrades, then get ready to make my play just as Tito's food emerges from the Starside machine. Each step has to be timed perfectly for this to come off without looking like I planned it, and both of those parts are as crucial as the other. Tito is the biggest kid among us, more husky than muscular, and as well as that, he's also one of the best pilots here and probably the most improved. His presence commands respect. And if the Bay's commanders wanted to reward effort and competence, then he'd be up there as a leading candidate. That's not what this place is about, though. The Bay has always been called a training station, with everything set up to get us all in shape, so whoever gets nominated will be ready. I've thought for a long time it's really a final evaluation center, where the commanders decide who is most suited for the mission they have in mind. Since there are so many lies swirling around their actions and motives, it's impossible to say what that mission really is. All I know is that I want to be on the last ship out of here, and that today is my last chance, so I'm not going to let it pass by without doing everything I can. I feel kind of foolish pulling stunts like this one, but I would never forgive myself if I didn't try everything. I'd always wonder if it could have been the one thing that would have made the difference. And I've done more than enough wondering for one lifetime. I don't want to wonder anymore. I want to wander. So I take a deep breath, and I do just that. I wander straight into Tito and his bowl full of piping hot algae-based oatmeal. My comrades grew up used to living in small spaces on LS Alpha, just like I did. But none of us have ever truly gotten used to the confines of the Bay. I can't even lie sideways in my dorm without hitting both walls, and I'm no big guy. The cafeteria feels deliberately small, too, to force us into something that goes way beyond proximity. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, since the stated mission we're being trained for is a solo trip to an expansive world. But what do I know? Anyway, 21 stir-crazy candidates with 2 serving machines and barely enough room to swing a chunk of cat-shaped algae. There's no way the commanders didn't anticipate the occasional scuffle. There haven't been all that many, and they're usually forgotten about just as quickly as they're broken up. But I'm not in the business of forgetting. I'm in the business of getting to Calbora, and that means I'm in the business of paying attention. With each step towards Tito, I pay closer and closer attention to his movements. I arrive at just the right time to collide as he turns away from the machine. I bump into him with enough force to send his tray flying, oatmeal and all, straight into his chest. I do nothing. I say nothing. Over my pounding heartbeat, I can hear excited murmuring among my drama-starved comrades. They all like me, more or less, but they're rooting for a fight that can only end one way, a way that's decidedly not good for my facial features. Tito is stunned, too, but it doesn't take long for our eyes to meet. I gulp away my fear, remembering what this is all for as he looks down at his oatmeal-covered clothes. When he looks back up, he seems to be trying to reason away his own rage. In the real world, or at least the closest approximation to a real world either of us have known, I would avoid confrontation with a hulking specimen like Tito, as though my life depended on it. I'm far from the smallest guy here, but he could eat me for breakfast. And now that it's my fault his oatmeal is all over the place, I'm kind of worried he might. "Sorry," I say, loud and clear, but then I lean in and whisper only to Tito, adding a little something extra. "Watch your damn step, you stupid idiot." In an instant, his attempts at gulping away the rage either fade or fail. He steps towards me. "What the hell did you just say?" We really are face to face now, which makes this easier and harder at the same time. The temptation to back down grows as his angry eyes loom larger, but I can now speak freely without the risk of anyone else hearing it. "I know you have less spatial awareness than a fly in a glass jar," I go on, way too far in to back out now. But can't you at least look at what you're crashing into? Surely even a pilot as bad as you can do that. I motioned to turn away, making sure to stand on his toes. There are other provocations I can fall back on, but they'll get progressively less subtle, so I hold my breath and hope for a reaction to this one. It comes, quickly and violently. I've never been so happy to be outmatched in a fight. Chapter 5. The fight doesn't last for long. I see Tito's first punch coming and manage to dodge the worst of it. I didn't want to dodge all of it, and to be honest, it came so fast that I don't think I could have, even if I tried. His momentum as he moves forward is easy enough to use against him, thanks to the self-defense training we're all versed in, which is more accessible to my mind than his right now thanks to his being clouded by rage. I bring us both down without making it obvious I wanted to. It's all working out so far. From there I move for a headlock, no blows, and make sure I don't get caught with a flailing elbow to the throat. There were 3 don'ts coming into this. Don't start it, don't win, don't quit. The first one was easy enough. My instigating worked like a charm. I don't feel bad about that because the ends justify the means, and then some. And although the point of this is to increase my own chance of being nominated, it has the side effect of all but ensuring that Tito won't be picked. The last kind of candidate the commanders want is a hothead who starts fights. He can thank me later. You see, my analysis over the past few months has shown me that the commanders don't see involvement in a fight as a disqualifying incident. And there's some reason to think it might even be a variable that increases a candidate's chance of nomination. There's no doubt strength of character is important to them, and there's equally no doubt that both of the candidates who came out second in previous fights have since been nominated. Neither was chosen at the nomination ceremony immediately after their fight, but I still think it could have contributed to their selection. Like I said, it's one more variable that seems to correlate. And I'd beat myself up for the rest of my life if I didn't try everything, including getting myself beaten up by someone else. In both of the previous fights, the losers gave a brave account and showed no hard feelings afterwards, so as soon as someone pulls Tito off me, I'll be sure to shake his hand. As he rolls over on top of me, I start to wonder just when that's going to be. Any time now, guys. Calling for help would defeat the whole goal of looking brave and dignified, but damn if it isn't all I can do to keep my mouth shut. This is probably for the best, since it also serves to guard my teeth as Tito swats my protective hands aside and rains down a blow that connects much more cleanly than his first. "You think you're funny?" he yells. I'm helpless to do anything as he balls his fist again and gets ready to end it. It's not a game anymore, and I'm furious at myself for letting him get me in this position of defenselessness. I'm way more upset that a serious injury will rule me out of making the last trip to Calbora than I am worried about the impending impact itself. For whatever reason, I don't close my eyes. That's why I see what happens next. Tito's fist pounds down and connects cleanly on the bridge of the nose. But not my nose. No, it skips. Alerted by the commotion and instinctively protective of his partner, my Peabot has thrown himself into harm's way and saved my face by risking his own. Tito, doubtless only further incensed by this, reels backwards with the pain of a broken wrist. I hope that doesn't count as winning, I think to myself. Trying to salvage the situation, I push Skip away and rush to check if Tito is okay. Others do the same, caring a lot more now than they did when he was set to punch my lights out. I apologize to Tito for bumping into him and spilling his oatmeal, and say I have no hard feelings about his lashing out. He tries to lash out again at that, momentarily forgetting about the aching pain in his wrist, but the others hold him back. After I watch them lead him to the door, a quick glance around the room brings a welcome sight for my thankfully only slightly sore eyes. One of the commanders is here, standing pensively with his arms crossed. He's far enough away from the doorway to tell me he's been here the whole time, which means he's seen the whole thing. He knows I didn't start it, and he knows I didn't quit or call for help. He knows I showed sympathetic concern for the comrade who tried to smash my face in, and most importantly, he knows it all firsthand. He didn't have to hear about this or watch any of the camera recordings back. He saw everything that happened, and he'll pass it on to his colleagues. I still don't know how much difference this will make, but post-execution I'm more confident in this plan than I was when I hatched it. When the commander winks before setting off, I feel my greatest rush of optimism yet. "Thanks, Skip," I say to my loyal P-bot. If he had hands and felt pain, he'd be rubbing his nose right about now. As it goes, there's no sign of damage to anything but Tito's wrist. I can't help but feel bad about that part. But the last few minutes really have saved the big guy from any chance of being chosen for a trip he didn't want to take. I didn't choose him at random either. With all of the variables considered, I had him down as a strong candidate. His likelihood of being chosen was second only to mine if I've worked things out as well as I think I have, which means the last few minutes have massively increased my chance by elevating myself in the commander's eyes while majorly clouding their view of Tito. If we have numerical scores in their true candidate ranking system, Tito's has just fallen while mine has risen. The gap between first and second has grown, and my optimism feels well placed. As some of the others lead Tito out of the door and towards the medical center to check on his hand, he gestures one last time and says that me and my stupid P-bot will pay. I'm fine with that. He's ruling himself out more and more with each passing second. So I casually dust myself off before heading to the back of the line. I don't bump into anyone this time. The cafeteria is as bright as ever, like the rest of the never-darkened bay, but this time I'm lining up at the planet-side algae machine. Calbora looks like a marble surrounded by dirty wool. Such is the strength of the storm system, but I live in faith that I'll reach the surface and finally get to... I can't get ahead of myself. Not yet. A glance at my watch tells me there's now less than an hour until the final nomination ceremony. I'll have to go back to my dorm for a post-scuffle change of clothes, but for now I glance out in silence. Some of the others are looking at me and whispering about the fight, mainly about my reckless bravery in standing up to Tito. None sit next to me. There's even an empty seat at the window, which gives me the best view of all. Skip joins me and floats there like a good friend, high enough to leave my view unobstructed as we silently gaze out. If Tito's injury precludes him from being nominated, your chance of random nomination has risen to 5%, the friendly P-bot says. No sense in worrying about what we can't change, I reply, and I mean every word. I've done it all now, left nothing on the table and put my body on the line for what I want. No one else can know what that really is, even Skip. But it finally feels like it might really be within reach. I will kind of miss the algae machine with its cool features and endless options. But I hope beyond hope that tomorrow's breakfast will be a ration pack under the blue Calboran sky. Chapter 6. In a word, the nomination ceremony is perfunctory. They always are, and even as the final one, this is no different. We're sitting in 4 rows of 5. No Tito. I don't know where he is, but he's decisively out of the running. No one dresses up in special outfits or anything like that, and the only real novelty is that these ceremonies are the only time we're allowed in the spacious commander's room. There are 4 commanders, all as emotionally detached and neutral as the rest, and none with personally identifying names. When they're with us, they all just refer to each other as Commander. We have our own names for them: Shorty, Lurch, Eyebrows, Nose, and I guess they use their real names amongst themselves. Eyebrows was the one who saw my scuffle with Tito, and he's the one doing the talking now. There's a little bit more substance than usual in his speech, since this time he's telling us it's the final nomination and that those of us who aren't chosen will soon be returning to LS Alpha. Full details of the return will come in due course, he insists, but I'm desperately hopeful that none of that will affect me. After all, I'm the one guy who wants to hear his name called. Zacharias Noble. Zacharias Noble. Zacharias Noble. I urge my thoughts towards eyebrows as if they'll reach him, but I know his decision is already made. It had better be the right one because I have somewhere else to be. We're seated alphabetically, which puts me as far from the podium as possible. I don't mind because it also puts me closest to the wall and closest to my calling. 9 posters fill the wall, each featuring one of the intrepid candidates who've gone before. In what has to be a good sign, my seat is dead in line with the only face I want to see, Daisy's. Her eyes are greener than the trees on Calbora, and even the natural fear of what might lie ahead couldn't dampen their glow in this pre-departure portrait. Daisy was one of 2 female candidates, both of whom happened to be not so randomly nominated. She spent 5 months on the bay before being called, and these last 4 have been the longest of my life. We grew close during the journey from LS Alpha to our holding orbit, and even closer once we got here. We did everything we could to keep it quiet, everything except not doing it. But we were always worried that our P-bots could be a weak spot. They've always been so perceptive, and the commanders can doubtless access everything they see and hear. So it didn't take long for us to realize that keeping it totally secret could be an impossible task. Needless to say, it was infinitely easier to ignore those feelings of fear than it would have been to ignore our feelings for each other. Our circumstances weren't ideal, but they were the only ones we had. Our eyes were open when we followed our hearts. We stepped forward despite seeing the challenges that lay ahead, not without seeing them. We had a strong feeling the commanders would try to split us up if they knew. And Daisy's nomination didn't exactly dispel the notion that they did. Only then did the tinges of regret start, bringing thoughts that if we'd just been able to hold off until the nominations were through, we might well have both made it back to LS Alpha and could have been together for as long as we wanted. When Daisy was about to board the approach pod, I told her I would do whatever it takes to get to Calbora. She was always at least as smart as me, and agreed that the real mission couldn't be the one we'd been told about, not when the other nominees hadn't returned, and the commanders were still sending more. So we knew there was a chance of a long-term stay on the Wonder Planet. As beautiful as Calbora is, it kills me to think of Daisy sitting there every month and looking up in hope that I'll be next to arrive, only to see that I failed again. I have never allowed my mind any consideration of an alternative possibility, that she might not be sitting there safely at all, and I won't start considering it now. Too many things about this mission are fishy for me to buy that the real purpose is short-term information gathering. Of course I hope Daisy is okay, safely down there for whatever the real mission might be, but I don't think I'm living on blind hope. Personally and very privately, I think the commanders and their superiors on LS Alpha want a permanent research presence on the surface of Calbora until the storm clears and allows more probes to do the work. They do see us as expendable, but for all the faith I lack in them, I have undying trust in the approach pods that have carried 9 of my fellow candidates. I've looked at the storm data, and I've looked at the pods. They can make it through. Relaunching from Calbora's surface is another story, what with our limited understanding of the required escape velocity and the potential that the storm might block out all automatic targeting. So that could be why no one has come back. I used to think it was possible that my 9 comrades on Calbora haven't even tried to come back, because why would they leave Paradise to come back to this metal holding cell of a station? But I'd like to think Daisy would do all she could to see me again. We were only close for a year, half during the journey here and half in this eternal orbit. But what we had was real. Daisy said as much as I did, and sometimes more, so I'm not guessing on that. This 4-month spell since she left has been tough, and only the possibility of reuniting has kept me going. If she could get here, I'm sure she would, just like I'm going all out to get there. I know she would. I tell myself that everything will be fine, that the others are all safe, and I'll be reunited with Daisy just hours after my name is... Our random draw for this final nomination has returned Zacharias Noble as our 10th and final candidate, Eyebrows announces, cutting off all of my thoughts just like that. May fate be on your side, Zacharias. Geez, that was sudden. So sudden it takes a few seconds to hit me. The pent-up exhalations from everyone else are loud and instant. Some of my comrades actually sob in relief that they're finally safe. Within seconds, a few of them are even standing up and hugging each other to celebrate. Clearly, they feel like there's no longer any need to maintain an aura of strength or stoicism, and clearly they're right. After all, they are safe. I, meanwhile, am anything but. But where I differ from them is that, to me, safety would have been a fate worse than death. When all I've wanted for so long is to be somewhere else, staying safely here would have been defeat. I want to jump up and celebrate too because I won. Keeping my cool now is even harder than it was when Tito was fixing to cave in my skull, with a whole different set of emotions behind it. I found the patterns, and I beat the system. I did it! Slowly my comrades turned towards me in consolation. I don't fake sorrow or plead for a redraw. I accept my fate, the fate I've worked so hard to attain, and I keep the blankest expression I can. This becomes even more difficult when I glance back to the wall, but my eyes can't help it. Those green eyes are calling, louder than ever. Everyone is waiting for me to react, and they've all seen me transfixing on the poster. I can't lean away from this one. Not that there's any reason to, so I opt to lean in. Well, I say, allowing a slight smile to crack even as I measure my words to keep most of my joy inside. At least I'll get to look for Daisy. The commanders all nod curtly, as though they're impressed by my calmness, but I swear Eyebrows is trying to hide a grin of his own. Chapter 7. Throughout the course of one afternoon, I hear more words from the commanders and speak more words to them than I have since we left LS Alpha last year. None of their information or orders are new, but they're certainly taking a keener interest in my emotional and physical state than they ever have before. They need to check I'm in good shape for the journey, they tell me, which makes some kind of sense. It would have made even more sense to keep on top of everyone's well-being with these kinds of questions and tests, instead of only checking candidates out after their nominations. But hey, what do I know? I just live here. But not for much longer. The final stages are hours I endure impatiently, fighting boredom rather than any kind of strenuous challenges. Once it's all done, I'm dismissed to gather my things and say my goodbyes. Everyone is waiting outside the commander's office when I emerge, and even Tito shakes my hand and wishes me luck. His hand is bandaged. Kids, don't ever punch a Peabod at full force, so I take care not to hurt him. I hope you find what you're looking for down there, he says. Rather you than me, comrade, but I hope you make it. I appreciate Tito's sentiment and the honesty, but the glum expression on his and every other face isn't what I wanted to see. They're no longer happy it's not them, as they were at first, because now that reality is sunk in, they've moved on to being worried for me. This has been a familiar pattern for them after each nomination, but negativity is the last thing I need. We've been in the same boat for so long, living a restricted and regimented life that makes LS Alpha's enclosed sectors feel like bastions of freedom. So it's little wonder we've built a bond. The others have those sectors to look forward to on their return, but something much bigger lies ahead of me. I excuse myself as soon as I can and hurry to gather my few possessions. Then it's straight to the approach pod for the final launch procedures. Time is a blur until I get there, and once I'm strapped into my command module, it feels like any other training exercise. I hear the holding zone's door open before I see the light, because my visor is set to 100% opacity. I can't see outside, I tell the commanders. The module is laced with full surround speakers and mics, meaning there's no need for a headset.
Zacharias,
one replies. It's Eyebrows, no mistake. I don't like his tone. Yeah?
there are some things we need to tell you. Things we couldn't tell you until now for very good reasons, but things we must tell you now for even better ones.
I gulp. With the speakers silent, all I hear is my thumping heart.
First of all, the nominations weren't random,
Eyebrows says. I relax instantly. Wow, who saw that one coming? If that's the big reveal, I'm good, mainly for old time's sake. I feign surprise. Really?
And that's not all. This time, there's something we need to show you.
Instantly, I let out the loudest and sharpest gasp of my life. At first, there is only shock, but it doesn't take long for awe and wonder to kick in. At the touch of a button, my visor clears. I can see outside. Calbora looms large in the... Oh my God, the surface. There's no storm. I can see the whole planet. In all its incredible glory, I gaze speechlessly upon the enormous world before me. Blue ocean, green forest, even snow-capped mountains. It's so much better than the images from the probe. It's real. It's right there. It's right in front of me.
There was never any storm system, Eyebrows explains. The visual effect has been overlaid on every window and telescope in the Bay and LS Alpha. Entry to the Calboran atmosphere poses no meaningful risk. All tales of difficulty and failure have been fabricated for the greater good.
I really didn't see this one coming, so there's no need to feign anything. But, Eyebrows takes a breath.
To be brief, as soon as Calbora was detected, hysteria took over. A planet that looked perfect and which observational data quickly showed to be perfect was finally within reach. There were calls for rapid colonization, with violence igniting when conservative voices called for sensible precautions. We had to buy time, and only by masking the planet in a supposedly impenetrable storm could we hope to carry out sensible research without risking even greater impatient chaos at home. That's where you came in.
I'm stunned, speechless like never before. All I can do is listen as I gaze at the incredible world that awaits.
We needed brave and capable researchers with long lives ahead of them, so we recruited the best young candidates LS Alpha had to offer. Today, Zacharias, you were ultimately chosen for this mission because we deemed you most likely to accept it. The same was true for the 9 who came before you, but far from all of them lived up to our expectations.
Wait, did I hear that right?
I'll lay this out simply as I did for them. You have a simple choice. You can continue to Calbora as a hero and do what we brought you here to do, or you can return to LS Alpha. Painless reprogramming will leave you with no memory of this conversation, and like everyone else, you will believe that your pod was unable to enter the Calboran atmosphere. No one will hold anything against you, because for all they'll know, you've tried all you could to complete the mission. 5 of your fellow nominees have already chosen that conservative course of action, and are currently suspended in the Bay's medical center to be awoken on our return home.
I can't believe what I'm hearing. The level of this deceit and the starkness of the choice would be maddening if it wasn't for my shock over which choice so many of my colleagues had taken. 5 out of 9 chose to go home? I ask in genuine surprise, focusing only on this. Even though they knew the storm was fake?
Yes.
But why?
The journey to Calbora is a one-way trip, Zacharias. You have been chosen today because you've shown yourself as not only a highly capable pilot, but as a person well-suited to complex missions. Backing out would not be held against you, given the gravity of the choice, and you would live a safe and simple life on LS Alpha with opportunities for more routine exploratory missions as we see fit. Oh. Should you accept the mission, however, you will become the fifth and final guinea pig sent to test the effects of long-term exposure to Calbora's atmosphere. Bounteous resources have been deployed and comfortable living arrangements are in place. You will have direct contact with a liaison team on LS Alpha, but no contact with the general population. The mission will be a clandestine one, for reasons you now understand, and you will be reported as assumed deceased. One day your story will be told and your name will be celebrated. That is, should you choose to accept the mission. I take a second to catch my breath. Calbora is safe, and I can either spend my whole life there or return to LS Alpha and forget I ever learned any of this. The planet is calling loud and clear, but one question will determine everything. I figure we're way past deceit now, so I go straight to it. What did Daisy do? A thick silence fills the air until I'm sure I hear a gulp. I'm not at liberty to divulge any other candidate's choice. I'm sorry. Cough if she accepted the mission, I plead, more in hope than expectation. If he can't overtly tell me, maybe he can still let me know. I'm sorry, Zacharias. I pound the edge of my seat with my fist. Skip chimes in. Be careful, Zach. That won't help. But you might, I excitedly reply. What do you think? Can you read anything from the commander's voice? Do you have any insight I've missed? Where is she, Skip? 4 of 9 candidates have accepted the mission, my loyal Peabot replied. That gives an approximately 44.44% chance that Daisy is on Calbora. On the balance of numerical probability, returning to LS Alpha presents your greatest chance of seeing her again. I wait for some kind of utterance from the commander, hoping he'll crack. He doesn't. That's it then. All on me. Skip is trying to help as always, and his last comment shows that he understands my motives. His problem is that he can't see past cold numbers, and cold numbers don't apply here. Daisy isn't just one of 9 candidates. She's one of a kind. Her decision, like mine, was different from theirs. Some of them were driven by a drive to explore and a hatred for their old lives on LS Alpha, while others were clearly driven by a desire to avoid a life of near-total isolation on an uncharted planet whose natural beauty could quite conceivably be masking myriad dangers. For me, and I hope for Daisy too, the decision is about what gives us the best chance of being reunited. She was making the decision blind, not knowing whether I would later be chosen, and perhaps considering it mathematically unlikely that I would. In terms of sheer numerical probabilities, Daisy's decision would have been much more straightforward than mine. But I can't shake my memory of the last conversation we had 4 long months ago, when I promised her that I would do everything I possibly could to get there. That was when I thought that Calbora was engulfed in a deadly storm, but she still believed me. I weigh it all up. Even if she truly believed I was going to try to secure a nomination, did she really believe I was going to succeed? I'm in, I say. It's more of a shout, blurted out as soon as the conviction hits me. This is love versus fear, and in this irreversible split-second decision, I'm endeavoring that I would rather follow my heart to the wrong place than let fear chase me to the right one. You're in? The commander asks, his tone still neutral. All the way, I say. I'm betting on Daisy in the hope and faith that she bet on me. Commander, I'm betting on us. He says nothing, possibly thinking I'm still trying to extract a clue. I'm not. The decision is made. I turn to Skip. He smiles warmly, his face showing no sign of the brutal punch it took on my behalf this morning. Well, Zach, I guess we're going to Calbora. Chapter 8. I've never been less happy to see my friends.
Nothing against them. They're just not who I came for. During a 10-hour journey spent thinking only of Daisy and praying only that she's waiting for me, the increasing beauty of Calbora kept me sane. The landscapes are so varied that my mind is still struggling to make sense of everything I've seen, even as I make the final approach, and what seems to be a sprawling living complex is far grander than I imagined. First, I see Julius and then Maxwell, both right at the edge of the complex. My visor's focused zoom control identifies them, and although they're not who I really wanted to see, they still would have been up there among the guys I was most keen to reunite with. They've clearly heard an approach pod coming in and are rushing across to the landing zone to see who's joining them. Julius was the first nominee to leave the bay, and Maxwell was third, but I don't know how long these guys have had to wait since the last new arrival. For all I know, the 4 nominees who accepted the mission might have been the first 4 to be chosen. That would mean no one has arrived for 6 months, but I can't entertain a thought like that. Daisy arrived 4 months ago. Nothing else can be true. I zoom out from Julius and Maxwell looking for more movement. As my pod begins its final touchdown procedures, I see a third person leaving the complex. Blonde hair. Long enough to be her, I think, but it could be Karina. Zoom, zoom, zoom. My heart sinks. It's Karina. She's been here since before Daisy left, and although she was one of my closer friends on the bay, she's also not who I came here to be with. I zoom out, but turn to Skip, unable to look anymore. 3 of 9 nominees are accounted for, he says. That leaves an approximately 16.67% chance that Daisy accepted the mission. I know where he's got that number from, but it's not right. She was more likely to accept than any other individual. I know she was. But where is she? No sooner do I touch down than Julius rushes forward to peer into the pod. The atmospheric readings are as perfect as expected, and no one is wearing any suits or breathing apparatus. So I'm unsurprised when the air seal lifts and I hear a gentle breeze slipping by. The next thing I hear is Julius. "It's Zach! Karina, it's him!" I raise a hand to Julius through the visor, trying not to look too dejected. It's not his fault he's not who I wanted to see, just like it's not Karina's. And I'm not giving up hope yet. I look out again to Karina and see that she's turned around and taken a few steps back towards the living complex. "It's him," she calls, repeating what Julius said a few seconds ago. Am I reading too much into it, or does that tell us something? I whisper to Skip. My heart, well, skips more than a few beats as I reflect on this. Karina didn't say, "It's Zach." She said, "It's him." Surely that means they were expecting me? Hoping for me? And surely that means... Where Karina had slowly emerged a few moments earlier, a similar figure now sprints from the complex like a greyhound from its trap. I watch her every step with a glee like no other, the moment seeming to pass in slow motion, as every flowing hair and every millimeter increase in the depth of her smile registers with immense clarity in my mind. Daisy! I climb out of my chair and reach the ground before she's here. Julius pulls me in for a hug. "Hey, bro, did you bring the stuff we asked for? The commanders packed it all, right? Our last requests?" I barely even hear this. "Oh, yeah," Maxwell says. "We've been waiting for our last request since Daisy came in. I asked for chili seeds and some playing cards. Did you bring them, dude? Did you?" I hear it this time mainly because Maxwell always talks so loud. I can understand their interest in whether these luxury items are here, since we are all here for life with no access to anything we didn't bring with us. But I feel like Maxwell in particular seems way happier at the prospect of his cards and chilies than the fact I've joined them. None of that matters, though, because I didn't come here to join them, and it doesn't matter how happy they are to see me. "Everything each of you requested arrived in the pod with Zacharias," a commander's voice announces loudly from the speakers behind us. "Along with some new equipment we've deemed useful.
We would have sent it without him, but, like each of you, he stepped up to accept the mission."
Maxwell punches the air upon confirmation that his requests have been fulfilled, but I'm only focused on Daisy. I start running, hopefully not so belatedly that she wonders why I'm not excited. I am. I'm beyond excited. It's just so overwhelming. Seeing Daisy again after 4 months is enough of an emotional rush in itself, but having come so close to the prospect of never seeing her again has amplified everything. I know she's been here for 4 months, and I now know that no one has arrived in the meantime. So her feelings of tension and helplessness must have been even worse than my own. We don't so much meet as collide, slowing at the last possible second for our reunion kiss to be as gentle as it deserves to be. This would be heaven anywhere, but on the surface of paradise, it feels like I'm really there. As we part, eventually, the trees in the background bring out her eyes even more vividly than ever, just like I knew they would. "Nice of you to join us," she smiles. "Took you long enough." I can't help but laugh, and neither can she. "Thought I'd keep you on your toes," I say. We were always like this, full of good-natured back and forth. Over Daisy's head I can see 4 Peabots emerging from the living complex, completing our new population. One untamed and uncharted world for 5 humans and 5 floating head robots. Wish us luck.
"Chilies!"
Maxwell yells as he finds the seeds, rifling through the cargo like a hungry bird looking for scraps. He hasn't talked about anything besides his chili seeds for months. Daisy laughs again. Oh, how I've missed that laugh. "Do you want to grab your things?" I shake my head. "Later. They're not going anywhere. Do you want to go over and get your things?" She returns the gesture, a quick shake of the head that sends her hair flowing. Her eyes hold mine, imprison mine. But I already noticed that it's grown an inch or 2 since she left. Calbora has been good to Daisy, even through the inevitable stresses, with her skin as clear and her lips as soft as ever. "What was your last request anyway?" I wonder out loud. "What did you ask the commanders to send?" She takes my hand, a touch I've missed more than anything, and leads me slowly towards the living complex I'm now lucky enough to call home. What do you think, Zach? You. Thank you for listening to Wanderlust, written by Craig A. Falconer. Narrated by Jack DeGolia. Copyright 2020 by Craig Falconer. Production copyright 2021 by Craig Falconer. All rights reserved.